In Jared's presentation that we just saw, one of the big takeaways is, of course, transportation, and that it is the biggest source of climate and carbon emissions, greenhouse gas emissions here in Vermont, and frankly, one of the toughest issues, I think, toughest, most intractable challenges we face as we think about our work. Our next two speakers are actually going to talk a little bit about transportation. And I just want to give a shout out to something, a resource related to this that I think is really helpful. The Vermont Energy Education Program just a few months ago published a poster, and it gives you the carbon emissions sort of rating of every different transportation choice to school per mile. And you start at the top with walking, of course.
Oh,
and imagine that. Oh, there it is. Thank you, Cara. All right. And then at the very bottom of the list is driving alone in a SUV. And as we think about sort of the choices we make and our communities make about transportation, what I think about is, for every trip we make, how do we move up that pyramid, right? Every time we have a choice, can we find somebody else to ride in our car? Can we take the electric car instead of the gas car? Can we take a bus instead of driving? Or finally, can we figure out a way to walk or bike to our destination? I want to bring up somebody who has traveled all the way here from Bennington, who thinks a lot about that biking piece, and how do we get people more comfortable biking in their communities. So Bruce Lierman, come on up.
I'm going to try to do this from the podium. No one ever asked me to speak for 5 minutes before and liked the result, but I'm going to stick to the script and we'll see what we do. There are so many reasons we might want cycling and walking as part of our community culture. At this conference, we're mostly interested in the positive impact cycling and walking can have on the resilience and mobility of our communities and on reducing our dependence on fossil fuels. I'm talking about the trips that we make that we could replace with a bicycle. I'm not talking about putting a bike on the back of your car and taking it to the path to ride. I'm talking about a path that replaces a car trip. Now, the first thing you need in your community to do this is a community of service organizations within the community to back you up. You need empowerment. You need to have a committee of committees that will talk about and understand why people don't ride bikes in your community. Generally, this is what you'll hear. I'll get hit by a car. I don't want to be in the way of the traffic. They'll be mad because I'm slowing them down. And I'm not fast or brave enough to ride in traffic. I want to tell you that these are all based on myths. Before you become a person, you can get a person on a bike as a long-term, frequent rider, you'll have to change these beliefs. The real reasons people have crashes is because they lose control of their bike or because they put themselves in situations where they become at risk. And at least 90% of these risks can be mitigated by the cyclist. This is part of the reason for cycling education, and more importantly, a cycling course must convince the cyclist that they have a place on the road and that they can be a positive and relevant part of the traffic mix. Now, if you're a person who gets up every morning and because of skin color or gender or age or physical abilities, you don't believe that you're really part of the community, you have an extra burden in trying to learn to bicycle as transportation. Rise Vermont is an organization in Vermont. Many of you probably know about Rise Vermont. They have a mandate to improve community health. And they were my ally in running a bicycling education course in Bennington this last year. They do wonderful things. And the reason they do wonderful things is because they are really good publicists. And they also have connections deep into the community with people I might never meet. And they're the ones that can put forward to the total community what the advantages of cycling might be. Now, so Rise Vermont took care of the publicity, they advertised for me, and they provided sponsorship. This course cost money. And they provided scholarships that could offset the cost for people for whom cost might be a barrier in the community. Okay, now we'll go forward. And that brings us to Cycling Savvy. Cycling Savvy is a 9-hour course. It's got 2 certified instructors and very sophisticated interactive presentations. It provides a very supportive group environment in which you can operate. All of this is aimed toward empowering the cyclist to believe that they have a place on the road and give them the confidence that they know how to deal with traffic situations. So they're subtly convincing people that they have this place on the road through a series of parts of the program, and it works. Okay, I'm going to move that again. Whoop. Going back. I'm trying to go back. I'm sorry, I've blasted. Yeah. Good, let's just leave that one. Okay, so I'm going to wrap this up by telling you that you can bring this into your community and that education is the most cost-effective means you have to changing people's attitudes about how the traffic mix ought to work in their community. More than infrastructure, more than lines on the pavement, it's what people believe that is what really controls whether they're going to be in this presentation or not. Okay. Or whether they're going to be a cyclist in your community or not. So again, I want to I'll forget that. I would not have been able to do this without a lot of people in our community who helped, and we coordinated through this activity. A lot of people who had never worked together. And I think that is also a key part of how you make cycling part of the culture and how it can really offset the emissions in your community. I'll leave it at that. Thank you very much.